Good morning, dudes and dudettes. One take. Everybody knows the rule. I hope you all have had a wonderful day. And we're going to be talking about a fun one for today. We're going to be talking about civil rights and civil liberties and how the course countries matter, right? Because this is comparative government, so we just care about the 6 course countries. What I can say is that this topic is going to be probably the most natural to debate or to argue or to go think deeper about, because civil rights and civil liberties is such a important topic into not just today's world, but into our personal perspectives, right? The way we think about ourselves is the way we think about our civil rights and our civil liberties. But what we're going to be focusing on today is just, generally speaking, the comparison between the democratic and the authoritarian countries. Overall, though, what we're focusing on is going to think about how we can talk about this in the FRQs. Because if we go on this very general perspective of civil rights and civil liberties, it might not help us with the FRQs, because we need to focus on tangible, simple, and actually, I guess you want to say, explainable perspectives, right? So, what are we talking about? We're talking about our 6 countries, and we're talking about the general idea that a authoritarian country is going to be more strict on civil rights and civil liberties, and then comparative to the democratic countries. But how do you explain that? Like, what do you say to do that? You can just say that, right? But you need evidence. And what evidence are we going to be using? And I would say probably the best evidence to use is media, just because it's the easiest to talk about, right? You can easily say that democratic countries usually have more media freedom than authoritarian countries. And you can talk about any of the 3 authoritarian countries in the comparative government course countries and bring up many examples of where they were a bit more strict on the use of media rather than the democratic countries. What I can say, though, is that you're going to have the Poindexter. Excuse me, the United Kingdom did the 18, you got to put your ID thing. Yes, I understand that. But that didn't force you to not use your media. That just required you to upload your ID. Is it the coolest thing on earth? Is it the greatest, like, libertarian, I can do what I want and the government can't tell me anything? Yes, queen. No. Obviously, the United Kingdom doing something like that probably angers about 90% of the people in the country. But they didn't restrict your usage. They didn't just cut your data off. They just asked you to upload something, which you should be able to do because you're not, if you're under 16 or whatever. Australia is also doing the same thing with social media, I'm pretty sure. But generally speaking, the authoritarian countries are just much more strict with just even allowing media use. In Iran right now, they've had a blackout. Iranians just don't have access to the internet at the moment, to my understanding. In all 3 of the authoritarian countries, they have heavily nationalized their media rights. So that just means that the government has direct connection to the usage of how the media works. I do understand as well, during the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the beginning of it, there was a lot of Russian state propaganda inside of the especially eastern Ukrainian areas. So generally speaking, what I'm trying to get at here is, for civil rights and civil liberties, is that we understand and we know, just naturally understanding what an authoritarian regime is, what a democratic regime is that there's going to be more civil rights and civil liberties in democratic regimes. Great, that's awesome. That's not going to help you in this test. That's not going to help you inside of comparative government. We actually have to compare. That is just a blanket statement. What is the comparison we can make? And the easiest comparison is going to be media. You could talk about protesting. I think protesting is another pretty easy one. You could talk about that in, like, the United Kingdom. When they protest, they're not going to kill you. They might tell you to stop it, or they might send the police, but they're not going to hurt you. While in the authoritarian countries, that might be a different perspective. There might be some death involved if there's a big protest. So you could talk about protesting as well. But overall, I think media is the easiest because there's so much to talk about. And why? Why do authoritarian governments care about their media or care about the protesting so much? Like, why can't they just be like the democratic country? Well, it's pretty simple. It's that they're trying to control, and they want order. They want simplicity. They want to say, we have the power, the government has the power, and we don't want the citizens to have this power. We don't want them to have the power of information. We don't want them to have the power of being able to say whatever they want. So government is only allowed transparency when they are confident in their government. Transparency is probably the easiest way to take away, and when a government is not transparent, that means they're not confident in their decisions. With that though, the difficulty can now be is that a country like Russia is a hybrid regime, right? Russia is a illiberal democracy. They're not technically a pure authoritarian. And the whole point of this is the reason why we can argue that Russia is leaning authoritarian and not leaning democratic is that because Russia is a little bit more strict when it comes to protesting and media freedoms, which then tells us that they lean towards that authoritarian perspective, right? So overall, when we're talking about the idea of civil rights and civil liberties, what we're really trying to talk about here is we're trying to talk about the ability for citizens to do what they want inside of a certain regime. And if they are more strict in those actions, then they're leaning towards authoritarian. And if they're more free, or I don't want to say free, because obviously in a lot of democratic countries, they still restrict you. It's just less restriction. It's more openness, or better, secret restriction, right? I mean, like, what? People get mad about, like a government listening to what you say on your phone or tracking you or things like that. America's been doing that for years now. Like, it's just they've hid it better. They're just less open about it comparative to other countries. So every single country does that. It's just, that's the reason why I want to focus on protesting and I want to focus on media, because those are the two that are the easiest to just blanket statements say that Nigeria, yes, is more aggressive to protesters, but they don't necessarily kill them. Mexico, yes, has issues with violence, but not towards protesters per se, while Iran does have issues with protesters. So that's just something we can easily state. And if an FRQ question comes up about civil rights and civil liberties, I would suggest just focusing on media rights and doing a little bit of research, watching a few YouTube videos, reading a little bit about specific examples of media issues or media right issues inside of all 6 countries, so that you can be better prepared to have evidence to make those statements, right? Because we need evidence. You can't just say Iran has more strict media policies than Nigeria, so Iran's an authoritarian country. It doesn't count. What are the more strict? I guess you want to say, like, again, provide examples. So, yeah, I think that's it for civil rights, civil liberties. Surprising, right? Because it's such a big concept, but that's the point, is I'm trying to simplify it for you. It's to just make it very straight to the point. When an FRQ question comes up, focus on one of the 2 things. Do a little bit of research outside of this video to make sure that you fully understand examples to use for protesting and for media rights. And then generally speaking, you should be pretty good. You just need to be able to write that down in a coherent way. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Sleep well, eat well, have fun.